Graphing trig functions. Start off with the amplitude. The amplitude of your graph is the height of the curve, the distance from the x-axis to the highest point on the curve, or the distance from the midline to the height of the curve. Your period, one period of your graph is where the graph does not repeat itself. So one period of this graph will go from here to here. This is one period. If I continue and go any further, this graph would definitely begin to cycle, and that's a sine curve. Same thing with the cosine curve. Cosine curve, one period will be here until the graph begins to repeat itself. And you definitely can continue with your arrowheads, and the graph will continue to oscillate. But that is your cosine curve and your sine curve. We'll first start out finding the amplitude, which is the number in front of sine. It's going to be your A. If you look up here at the top, it's going to be your A. In this case, it's going to be 1. So my amplitude here is going to be 1. Number 2, we're going to find the period. The period is, for sine and cosine, is 2 pi over b. B is going to be your coefficient of your angle. In this case, it is 1. So the period is going to be 1. 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to break the period into 4s. So we'll do 2 pi over 4. And then that'll give us pi over 2. So when we get ready to graph, we're going to break it up into increments of pi over 2. Pi over 2, 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 4 pi over 2. We're going to graph this from 0. What's the sign of 0? It's 0. What is the amplitude? 1 up. 1 down. So, sine of 0 is 0. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. Sine of pi is 0. Negative 1. And 2 pi, it is back to 0. So here it is. We have our graph. Continues in this direction, but the blue represents one period. Alright, we have... Alright, we're going to start off by finding the amplitude. So the amplitude is going to be 2. The period is going to be 2 pi over b. And in this case, b is also 2. So the period is going to be pi. I'm going to split our period into 4 so that we can mark it along the x-axis. And so here we go. So we have pi over 4. That's 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and 4 pi over 4. Now it's time to graph this. Go ahead and put my amplitude in 2, and down here negative 2. We know if we put in 0 for sine, sine of 0 is 0. Then if we put in pi over 4, it goes up, comes down, under, and up. We just graphed one period, but I definitely could put arrowheads on it to show that the domain is all real numbers and that the range goes from negative 2 to 2 in this particular case. Alright, so we're going to kick it off. We have our amplitude. Where do we get our amplitude from? The amplitude is what's in front of your trig. In this case is 1, so I mark it on my graph, 1 and negative 1. The next thing we do is the period. The period is 2 pi over b. In this case, b is 1. Coefficient of the angle, or x. So this is 2 pi. We're going to split it up into fourths and see what our x increments are. Alright, so when we split 2 pi over 4, we get pi over 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our graph up in increments of pi over 2. So this is 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 4 pi over 2. We are ready to graph this thing. Let's see the cosine of x. We'll start off with 0. Cosine of 0 is 1. So, look at us. We're starting in the air this time. So, the cosine of 0 is 1. And then the cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Cosine of pi is -1. Come back up, the cosine of 3 pi over 2 is 0. And here we go. We just graphed one period, and we can continue if we would like. There we go. For this one, you try and then check your answer against mine. Alright, take a look at this graph. We had a -3 in the front, so we know the amplitude is going to be the absolute value of that. That's 3, so we marked it on our graph, 3 and -3. The period is 2 pi over 1/2, and that'll give us 4 pi. We split that into fourths, and we get pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. When we get ready to graph it, when we put in 0, let's go ahead and put in 0 here. We put in 0, 0 times 1/2 is 0, cosine of 0 is 1, and 1 times -3 is -3, and that's why we're starting down here. Remember with graphing transformations, absolute value, and quadratics, anytime we have a negative, it would reflect across the x-axis. Alrighty, hope this helps. Alright, this one looks a little different. We have a transformation in place. This is going to shift pi units to the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to graph the parent function, which is y equals sine of x. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shift this pi units to the right. So go ahead and graph the parent function. Alright, so here we have the parent function in blue dots. Then let's graph the shift. Here's the shift. Every point moved over pi units. So if you take a look, this was at 0 and we added pi units. This point right here in blue is at pi, and we add another pi, and we're at 2 pi. So it definitely shifted. That ends our video. Thank you.